Hello there, welcome to my studio. My name is Matthew Palmer. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a small winter scene with a beautiful building and a beautiful bit of sort of distant trees and that kind of thing, and make a potentially a project that could be used for a greetings card or just for any general watercolour tuition. But the exciting thing is, yes, it is exciting, we're going to be using just one brush and only two colours, and those materials are here right now. So we're going to be using some natural violet, pop a little bit just there, and we're going to be using some natural orange, beautiful, and then the brush is actually just going to be a size 6 brush. Size 6 brush, obviously good to have water, a little bit of sketching with the pencil as well, and a couple of pieces of kitchen paper as well, just to mop up the excess should you need it. But that is everything we need. Now what we've done on the actual painting itself here is we've got a landscape orientation sheet of watercolour paper. The size of the paper is up to you. This particular sheet is going to be around sort of 10 inches by about 6, but you could go half that size, it wouldn't really matter. So this is probably quite large if it was greetings card, but it doesn't really matter. Just a wintry themed kind of picture is what it's all about. Now I want to do a little bit of sketching. I want to sketch in a bit of a building, but before we do that, we're going to pop a little bit of masking tape across, remove the stickiness, pop that tape about a third of the way up, roughly about a third of the way up, something like that. And then we're going to use this ruler, it's not a ruler, it's a pencil, and we're going to sketch in together. So we're going to sketch in a bit of a building here, so a vertical line. Now if you do want to use rulers for this, I'll just give you some idea on the size of this. That is about 1 inch, and then we're going to go slightly up, pointing up something like that. That is going to be about 3.5 inch, roughly 3.5 inch. Notice it goes slightly up, but only a touch. Now I want to make it a little bit sort of snowy covered, so we'll bring that up like that. See the curve, about 1 inch again, and then bring that up like that and let it disappear off to the side. Now over here we can do a small section of building, which is going to be an apex, potentially like a little outbuilding or a garage or something like that. Straight down, and again slightly uphill with that. Just thicken this edge a little bit, make the edge a little bit thicker for me, and that's given us a lovely building. We can put some nice surrounding details into this. I will pop the chimney on the top of this as well, and the chimney will be 3 lines that go straight up, vertical, but the middle line is the tallest one, and then you come down to meet it on either side. Let's pop in a few windows. Now for the windows it's good to have the ruler at hand, and I want to come down probably about a third of the way down and sketch in, I'd say pretty much a horizontal line, and then coming down to that horizontal line we're going to have 1, 2 and probably 3 windows. Now those are going to be the actual windows of the actual building, and then just here we're going to do the door and possibly another window, maybe slightly larger, just slotting in there. Now what is quite useful when you do windows is to actually mark in the framework, so I'd say keep it simple. 1 vertical line on each one of these, 2 on that one, and then we'll come straight across in the middle, and then we'll go straight across in the middle of that one. So you've got that nice window effect there. On this one, a small window in the middle, and a little bit of a door just here as well. The rest of the picture is going to be created with the brush. It's going to be created with the paintbrush. So all we need to do now is make sure we've got that sketch in place, which we have. We're quite happy with that. Pop all the other bits to one side, and then we can start painting. Now, as mentioned, we are just going to be using one brush for this entire project, so make sure it's clean And literally we're going to start off by wetting the area. I want to do this, I want to wet pretty much the whole area, loosely working around the edge of the building. It doesn't matter if a bit goes over the top of the building. I'm not concerned about that at all, to be honest. What's important is that you wet it enough that the whole thing's covered in water, slightly over the edge of the building. It wouldn't matter if it slightly overlaps. It really doesn't matter. A couple of coats of water is probably where you want to be. Also, the kitchen paper is good just to mop away any excess that might be gathering along that edge, but that is a good coverage of water. And then we're going to jump to the palette, and we're going to start off with some orange. Yes, we're going to take some natural orange. There it is. Quite a strong mix. Good to have kitchen paper to tap the excess away. And we're going to go up. Now, I'm not working all the way to the edge for this one. I'm sort of leaving that sort of vignette. Can you see how that's got that nice sort of fluid flow to it? Beautiful. Perfect. Clean that brush, and this time we'll take violet. Similar consistency. Again, that little tap on there, just a single tap. I always think it's good when you're working wet into wet to remove that excess. And then we'll bring that up like so. I'm not necessarily working to the entire edge. Now as it starts to mix on the paper, okay, you get that lovely bit of sky. Now, I quite like to see that little bit of rundown. I'm happy to leave that there. What you could do is you could mix together the violet and the orange a little bit thicker, so you get almost grey. You see it's almost a grey colour. And then what you could do is you could just do a little bit of a twist. Again, the tap on the tissue was quite useful there. This is only if your paper is still workable, by the way. You could also do a little bit of smoke on the chimney as well. With that colour, a little bit of just coming out the chimney there. Encourage the brush to twist. Clean the brush. Wipe it almost dry. Even give it a bit of a pinch. Watch out for the water gathering at the bottom there. And then literally, I'm just going to encourage the bottom of that cloud to disappear into the sky there. Beautiful. Really nice. Perfect. Now at the side here, we're going to make a bit of a dark green, a deep sort of green. And this is quite an easy colour to mix, really. It's not going to be a bright green, but orange with violet. You'll get a browny, grey sort of green tinge if you balance the two colours correctly. But more towards a grey with a touch more orange. I don't know if you can see those two colours. This one's slightly warmer in consistency. It's got a bit of a warmth to it, a very, very slight, and it's very slight tinge towards the green on the tissue there. And then literally up the side of this building here. Now it depends how wet things are on your picture, but if your paint's thick enough and you've tapped off that excess on the tissue, you can do some distant pine trees, as it were, and encourage that to look like a pine tree using the central line, this central line here, almost used as a core. Can you see I'm working quite close up to the edge of the building? Because I want it to look as though it's a bit out of focus, a bit blurry, hence the reason for doing it while the background is damp. If yours is dry, I'd still do this. Maybe just make the colour not quite as strong. But you get that nice impression as though you've got that sort of distant, out of focus tree, if you like. They're a beautiful thing to do on your picture. Now in the palette, we've got this colour here that we use for the clouds. I'm going to take some of that. This is more of a bluey, purpley grey, again on the tissue. It's always good to drop that at the bottom there. Get that real darkness coming in. And you can just slightly sharpen up, maybe darken one side of those trees more than the other. But also it gives you a chance to clean up the edge where the building is. Perfect. Now, where it ends here, clean the brush on the tissue 3 or 4 times, and then just give it a bit of a fade away. So you've created depth. If your brush is almost dry here, you can really go in and smudge away, and it just creates distance and depth. It's a beautiful thing to do. Now that's really good stage to be at there. We can start to put some shadows into the building now. Again, ideally it wants to be almost dry at this stage, almost dry. I'm not too concerned if it's a bit damp, but kind of dry. So we need a good strong colour, grey, which is lots of orange and lots of violet together. Probably about 50-50, and you should get a good natural sort of grey colour. Very thick, you can see the consistency of that paint there. If I just give it a bit of a tap on tissue with this size 6 or small super point as I'm using, you've got that lovely effect of shadows that we can apply. So these shadows go right down. You see it's almost dry enough to do this. It goes right up into that apex. The thicker the paint, the better. If your background is really wet, just leave this a minute before you actually do it. Come down here, make it a little bit thicker there. Stay with me, because we're also going to go under the eaves. Again, paint over the window. You can make that a little bit uneven to make it look like snow's gathering, because that's kind of the idea here. But that lovely line of grey. Clean your brush really well on the tissue. Make sure it's clean. So your brushes, add 3 or 4 wipes on tissue, and you're blending that paint down a lot. You pull in a lovely bit of detail, soften, clean the brush on the tissue, and give it a good old smudge. And look how that beautifully blends in. Gorgeous for the shadows, really nice. Same here as well. Follow the direction of it. Do practice your blending, because it can be quite a tricky technique for a lot of people. But that's like a little feather. If you want to keep that flowing, clean the brush again on the tissue again, and then just go in with a bit more water on the edge. And make sure it completely fades away to nothing, because that is going to make a lovely, beautiful shadow. Really nice. I always like to see a door open me, and to make the door look open, what you do is you use that same dark grey and you go in like an L shape. Come down the edge. Clean the brush on the tissue. And that'll give you a light side and a dark side. Perfect. We're getting there. We're getting there. More work to go. I'm sort of stalling a bit while things have a moment to dry here. While I've got that dark on the brush, it's a good time to sharpen up that edge. Just a little bit there. That's nice. Because the darker that is down there, the crisper that's going to be. Beautiful. Love it. Really, really nice. The windows need work on, but I do want to make sure that that completely fades away first. Perfect. Great. Okay, so we'll come back to the windows in a minute, but what I want to do is put some colour on the roofs now, so we'll jump back to the palette. For this, we want to use the violet. I can use the same one from the sky, but make it a bit thinner. I don't want it to be as thick as it was. So a bit of a dilution, but always give it a tap on the tissue first. That's always a good thing to do, especially if you're working against damp backgrounds. And what we're going to do here is paint along the top of that building and down the edge of it. So you can see it's like an L shape. Clean brush, a few taps, and then get the water on your brush to soften that in. You could make that darker by spotting in some colour while it's damp, but that should give quite a nice shadow. We can do the same thing across here, but do make sure things are pretty dry before you do that. I'm risking it a bit here. I think it's just about right, to be honest. Quite a broad line. Come down the edge as far as you can until you meet that other roof. Clean brush. Violet stains your paper, so quickly go in. Any blue will stain your paper, so just bear that in mind. Get the water on. Fade it away. Beautiful way of working. Can you see how we've got the snow on the roof? I love it. Really nice. We're going to put more work in that later on, but just needs a little bit of time to dry. We've got the colours we need. We've got the strong grey here. Beautiful thick grey here on the tissue for that. And I want to make these windows look as though they're set back slightly. So we're going to do this sort of L shape. This is the thick grey. Now you can see that's a little bit too damp up there. So it's probably, I'm a little bit early doing that one. But you know what? We're enjoying it. Same here as well. Let's do that doorway. That should let us do that doorway now, hopefully. Starting to dry. But can you see I've done them all as L shapes? Tissue. Keep that brush going. Don't get too worried if it does spread into the background. If you happen to leave a few light lines in the window, you know, it's all sort of well and good really. It doesn't really matter too much. I'm not too concerned about it. Perfect. That's looking really nice. Again, just make sure things are nice and dark here. I could even potentially just paint in a little bit of a, just to give a bit of scale, a bit of an old sort of gate or something, just sneaking off the side of the paper there. Just helps to give a bit of a detail effect. Almost in a position that we can put those final bits of detail on to the building, but not quite yet. The chimney would have a bit of a terracotta-y colour to it, I imagine, so we'd use more in the way of orange with just a little bit of violet, just to make the colour a little bit deeper. But you can pretty much just go for a bit of a stony type colour for that. Very simple through the tissue there. I'll rotate it so I don't put my hand on anything I shouldn't. Obviously we'll put a shadow on this, but to start with we can just block in the chimney of this little building. That just wants time to dry. That same colour, I do like that colour actually, and I'm going to use that colour to add some sort of stone windowsills. And lintel. And on that bottom window, that one's a bit damp there still. Yeah, it's just that little bit too damp to do that. But that's looking good. That's looking good. I'm just going to use some of that colour to put a few little bits and spots around just here, just to represent. And you can see the colour. I mean, it's like a browny, greeny brown colour. I want to use a bit of this and a bit of that grey, but I'll start with the browny colour and do some little spots and dots around here, just to say there's a bit of stuff, bit of, you know, foliage around, that kind of thing. Sharpen these up a little bit if I want to as well. Put a bit of grey in there. You can see how pointy the brush is, can't you, at this stage as well? Even if you want to go And paint a very thin line down the edge, the right edge of the window and the door as well. You know, that little bit of a recess that you get. That's using more of the grey for that, by the way. So if you sharpen the other side as well, you've got that as an option. Maybe even do a little bit of the fence running there, so it looks like it runs straight through. The grey is really good for putting the windows in, of course. And to be honest, I just tend to block them in. Because if you look at a building from the outside in, unless it's night time and the lights are on, then it's going to look as though the windows are actually dark. So I tend to do them like that, and then just to sharpen them up a bit, go across the top. And it's enough to give you the window effect. I mean, bear in mind what we're painting here is meant to be like a greetings card size picture, so I'm not too concerned about getting every little bit of detail. But I think before I go any further, I'm just going to sharpen that edge. Put some little bits down to represent some little brackets for the eaves or something. I'm just going to darken the side of the chimney a little bit as well with that same grey. But before I go any further, I just feel like I want to let things dry off because it's still a little bit on the damp side here. I'm just going to pop a little shadow down the side of those. But that's looking nice. It's looking good. I want to stop there. I want it to dry. I want to come back to it literally in a couple of minutes, but I want to stop at that point. The great news is that's all nice and dry, and probably if the colour's dried up a little bit, you can just add a bit of water to it. Remember that nice strong violet and orange is kind of where we're at with it. Don't be afraid of strengthening colour here. And let's tidy up this building and make it look a little bit more detailed, even little bits like just popping a line inside the door to give you the recess. You could do that on the little extension as well. You could put little lines coming around here, represent the underneath of the eaves kind of thing. You can sharpen up the windows, any little edges. If you get a really dry brush, which is actually taking the paint off, I always think it's nice on something like this to put little bits of markings, you know, little bits of edgings, detail, just that helps to represent the clarity of the building. If I swing it upside down, do the same from here as well. Can you see how the paint's like speckled? But what this will do is it'll make this have much more texture and just make it stand up, basically. Do the same coming down from the eaves as well. And then if we jump over to the palette, we've got that pale violet there on the tissue. I'm going to bring a little bit more work into the actual roof line. Get the water on there and just strengthen up the pitch of the roof, make sure these lines follow it. It all helps, don't it? It really does all help. I often think on something like this as well, on these sort of buildings, that you'd have a really weak grey. So if I lift some of the dark grey out and get it really pale, wipe it on the side there. So you can see it's much, much lighter in consistency compared to what I've already got. And then you do little bits of not stoneworks, it's meant to be a white building, but you always get a little hint, don't you, of the shadow where the rendering's gone over the top of the roof. Does that make sense? That little bit of added detail. While we're close in here as well, we could darken that little bit just there and there. That's got a bit more character to it. Looks good. I think we're ready at this stage to remove the masking tape. And then we're going to use some of the violet to actually bring in some shadows in the snow. So we'll take that out, being very careful. Watch out for the little white bits on the back. That normally means it's ripping. So you can do that very steady. Look how beautiful that is. The first thing I want to do is I want to pop that same piece of tape a little bit lower. I want to put a bit of a tree up there. Quite a definite sort of pine tree type vibe. And for this, it's going to be quite dark because of the nature of the colours that we're using. So we can make the colour quite orangey. We also get plenty of the grey as well. So you've got that sort of misty sort of colour. And I think quite a big, it's like a dark green colour. And start at the top with this colour. Leave some little bits where it might represent a bit of snow or something. But you can see where we're going with that, can't you? And you can see I'm painting it quite loosely as well. End of the day, it's meant to be a greetings card, not anything more than that. Take a moment to look back. This really sort of suits that vignette feel. If we grab some of the darker, the one that's more of a grey, we can put some darkness in there as well. Get a good base to it. That looks really nice. I like that little simple little tree there, just loitering around. We'll take the tape away steadily. Look at that, beautiful. We'll pop the tape back on again, or you can get a new piece. Live life dangerously. Pop that just there with that same colour. Do a little bit of a tickle down here. Almost to represent a bit of a little bit of foliage or something, a hedgerow. It helps to lead you literally down the garden path. The brownie colour, nice and dry, get your brush nice and spiky as well. And that's a really good way to create some texture in those areas. Like at the bottom of this, for example, if I was to do a little bit of dry brush at the bottom of that tree, it'll look like a shadow. I can take that off now very carefully. And then we can slightly skim. You sort of tickle the edge. It's definitely one to practice is dry brush. But it helps. It really does help. I use the strong grey. Try and get a point out of the brush if you rotate it a little bit. If you find that your brush is not very pointy, do think about using finer brushes. There's no right or wrongs there. Another little gateway. Lovely jubbly. I love that tree. Got the violet. A few shadows in the snow. On the tree. On the edge of the house. On these posts. Looks quite pretty. If you do the dry brush with the violet, like we did with the grey, and then potentially some little spots in the snow, which gradually get bigger. Which in my mind help to give the impression of footprints. It really does make quite a difference. I feel I just want to use a little bit of the dark grey in a very dry fashion. Just to add a little bit of added detail to that roof. Across the top of that roof. These little tweaks will help, should you wish to put them in. Back to the violet. Finishing touches. Down there a little bit. Got a sharp knife here just to gently scratch a bit of snow on the trees there. Can even scratch away a few little icicles, and the point is here that you're using a really sharp knife. You can see just how sharp that knife actually is, and honestly just don't be afraid to cut your paper with this. It's one of those things that people have a little bit of a fear of, but it does work nice. Even over the top of glass as well, if you do some diagonal flicks with it like this, looks like it's reflecting the glass. Of course, should you want any more on your tree, bits of snow on there, you can always scrape away that. That's a bit wet. I'm going to give that a quick dry. A little bit off, but it just helps to give an impression of a little bit of snow settled on this dark, almost silhouetted tree. Don't think it wants much. Very pale violet, really watery violet on the tissue. And put a little bit more violet in the snow there, I think. All in all, I think that's made rather a nice wintry theme, whether it be for a greetings card or just for a little watercolour painting. But again, all done with natural violet, natural orange. In a size 6 brush. How beautiful is that? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.